I've always felt like I'm carrying a weight too heavy for me. It's not a physical thing, but it's there every moment of every day. Guilt, the kind that gnaws at you until you're too tired to care, until you can't even remember when it started. It started when my sister Mika got sick. A small child, only 7, stuck in a hospital bed fighting kidney failure. And me, I'm the one who has to watch it happen, powerless to do anything but keep running. Running between jobs, running between bills, running just to stay alive. My name's Rafael Mendoza, but you can call me Pang. I'm 24, and I barely sleep. I'm a delivery driver during the day, and I work as a call center agent at night. It's exhausting, but it's the only way I can keep things moving, keep the cycle going. And no matter how bad it gets, I can't stop, because stopping means not being able to pay for Mika's dialysis, and that would kill her. It's been hard lately. So when I got an interview at a prestigious BPO company, I thought it was my chance. I'd been scraping together a little bit of money for months, hoping something would come through. So when I finally landed the interview, I thought it might be my big break. I found an Airbnb nearby for P1200. It wasn't much, but it was a small luxury. I could sleep in a real bed for once and get ready for the interview without rushing. But of course, I wasn't thinking clearly. That P1200 could have paid for Mika's antibiotics or maybe covered a dialysis session. But the interview, this could change everything. I had to take the chance. The place was nothing like the pictures online. The cozy studio they advertised was actually a converted storage room behind a sari store. A rundown little shop with flickering neon lights that cast long, eerie shadows through thin curtains. The air smelled of stale cigarettes, and something underneath the floorboards had the faint metallic tang of rot. The walls were thin, and I could hear the low murmur of voices and traffic outside, but it wasn't the kind of peace I was hoping for. It felt wrong, but I was tired, physically and emotionally, and I needed a bed. I opened the door and stepped inside. It wasn't clean, not really. There was a single bulb hanging from the ceiling that buzzed like an angry wasp. A bed, pushed into one corner, its frame creaking, and an old rusted fan that barely turned. The bathroom was barely bigger than a closet, with a moldy smell that made me gag. I set my bag down, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. It was late, and I needed to get some rest for the interview tomorrow. But as I walked further into the room, something caught my attention. A pair of sandals by the entrance, women's sandals, not my size. I frowned, wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe someone had left them behind. Then, I heard the sound of a door creaking open from the bathroom. A woman emerged from the bathroom. She was wearing a tattered robe, her hair hanging, in wet strands around her face. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her expression was flat, distant, almost like she wasn't really there. I froze. She looked at me and said, "Akala ko ako lang ang guest tonight." I thought I was the only guest tonight. Her voice was cold, too cold for the weather outside. Despite the oppressive heat of the Philippines, she felt like ice. When she reached for me, just a casual touch on my arm, I could feel the chill through my shirt. I pulled back instinctively, heart hammering in my chest. There was something wrong with her. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could feel it in my gut. I glanced around the room. No sign of the host. The space didn't feel right. But the worst part was the smell. Datu puti vinegar and something rotting beneath the floorboards. I tried to shake it off. I asked her if she was the one who booked the place, but she didn't really respond. Just stared at me with those lifeless eyes. She turned, then, almost too quickly, disappearing back into the bathroom without a word. My throat felt tight, and I forced myself to breathe normally. This was just some weird situation, right? I didn't know why, but I texted the host anyway. Just wanted to check, is the place empty tonight? The response came back almost immediately. Unit should be empty. Previous guest checked out this morning. I tried to shake off the feeling that something wasn't right, but I couldn't. Lacey, if that was her name, didn't seem like she belonged here. And the room was too cold, too still. As I lay in bed later that night, I heard it. A scratching sound. It came from inside the wall, slow, deliberate. Not like rats, it sounded more like fingernails dragging across the wood, or maybe someone trying to get out. I pulled the blankets up over my head, not wanting to look. I told myself it was just the house settling, but then I saw it, the mirror across the room. I had caught a glimpse of Lacey in it earlier, and her reflection had blinked a second too late. That was when I knew I wasn't just imagining things. There was something seriously wrong here. I tried to ignore it, I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. The scratching, the cold, the whispers that seemed to follow me wherever I went in that room. Everything felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. I kept thinking about the job. I had to stay calm. Tomorrow I could make everything better. The night felt longer than it had any right to be. The scratching from the walls didn't stop. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, and then in the middle of the night I heard it. Heavy footsteps down the hallway. Too heavy for Lacey, too loud. Someone was running toward my room. My heart raced. I grabbed my bag, grabbed the one thing that mattered, Mika's medication. I didn't even think twice. I was out of there. I kicked open the rusted window grate, almost ripping it off, and crawled out. The stench of rotting garbage hit me, but I didn't care. I didn't look back. Just as I landed in the pile of trash, something slammed against the door behind me. I didn't stop running. I ran full speed into the night. The police arrived soon after, but they didn't find anything. No sign of Lacey, no sign of the person chasing me. But they did find something. Bloodstains on the bathroom tiles. 3 sets of teeth marks in the mattress. A child's hair ribbon in the closet. Mika's favorite color. I should have known. I should have realized that night what was happening. But I didn't. I just kept going, trying to get back to normal. The interview didn't go well. I reeked of garbage and had scratches on my arms. But the worst part? The worst part was when I checked Mika's hospital bracelet the next day. The name was faded, barely legible, but I could make it out. It said, Lacey. I don't know how, but somehow she's still following me. She's still here, and I can't escape. I've always thought that relationships were like the threads on a worn-out sweater. You can pull at them and stretch them for a while, but if you keep pulling, eventually they snap. Mine with Leah had been fraying for a long time. At 29, I'd been on the fast track to nowhere, working long hours at a finance firm in Manila, pushing myself harder than I ever thought possible. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, and before I knew it, insomnia was my constant companion. Each night I'd stare at the ceiling, unable to turn off the racing thoughts in my mind. Leah, on the other hand, had always been the more fragile one. Her anxiety attacks were becoming more frequent, more crippling. What started as a few bad days a month turned into a cycle of dread that took hold of her, making her feel like she was drowning even when things seemed okay. It was hard to watch her go through it, but it was harder still to know I couldn't help. We both felt like we were on the edge, falling apart but too tired to try to put it all back together. We were a couple of young professionals in a city that never stopped, but inside, we were already broken. The endless cycle of stress and financial strain only made things worse. The loan payments, the medical bills, the silence at dinner, we were suffocating. When we finally realized that we needed to get away from it all, it was almost like a last-ditch effort to salvage something that was slipping away from us. So we booked a weekend at a so-called charming farmhouse in the foggy highlands of Bukidnon. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, just the two of us, away from the city, away from the noise, but we should have read the reviews. The warning signs were there, but we didn't see them until it was too late. We arrived at the cabin just as the sun began to set. The drive up had been long, the winding roads through the mountains thick with fog, but it didn't feel like we were escaping. The air had a strange heaviness to it, the smell of damp pine mixing with something else I couldn't quite place. As we pulled up to the cabin, I couldn't help but feel that this place was too isolated. The cabin itself was exactly what the listing promised, rustic, charming, with wood beams and a large porch. But something felt off. The first red flag came when I found the key under the mat. It was still warm, almost as if someone had just placed it there moments before. I glanced around, but the place seemed empty. There was no sign of the host, no greeting or anything to make us feel at ease. Inside, the cabin smelled like old wood and something faintly metallic. The guest book on the small table near the door caught my eye. It had only one entry from 6 months ago. According to the listing, this place was booked frequently, but the dust on the furniture seemed untouched. I moved to the bedside table to drop my bag, and that's when I saw it. A small pink hair clip, a butterfly design, sitting innocently on the table. I stared at it for a moment, feeling an uncomfortable chill run down my spine. Maybe the cleaners forgot it, Leah suggested, shrugging it off. I wasn't so sure. Then why does the dust look untouched? But I didn't say anything more. We were here to relax, to unwind, and I didn't want to start getting paranoid before the weekend even began. The first night should have been peaceful, a break from the constant hum of the city, but as the night wore on, the sense of unease only grew. At first, it was just the usual sounds, the wind creaking through the wooden walls, the house settling. But then it started. It started with a soft tapping at the front door. 3 short knocks, like someone trying to get our attention. I froze. Leah looked up from her phone, eyes wide, but didn't say anything. We both listened, but nothing else came. Then came the scratching at the window. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging against the glass. I tried to ignore it, but the sound was unbearable, growing louder by the second. "What the hell is that?" Leah whispered, her voice shaking. I couldn't answer. I felt it deep in my bones, a presence, something there with us. I peered through the curtains, half expecting to see a raccoon or some other wild animal. But what I saw outside froze me in place. A figure in a tattered white dress, standing, perfectly still next to the abandoned SUV near the tree line. The figure's head was twisted too far to the right, its fingers too long, dragging across the mud. I blinked, but when I looked again, the figure was gone. I slammed the curtain shut, heart pounding. "We need to lock the doors." Leah nodded, her face pale, and we both hurried to barricade ourselves inside. But just as we shoved the dresser against the door, something slammed into it from the other side. The entire cabin shook. We huddled together in the dark, trying to keep our breathing steady. But the silence that followed was worse than the knocking. The humming started then. Soft at first, a woman's voice singing Tulog Na, a Filipino lullaby drifting in from the woods. It sent shivers down my spine. I grabbed my phone and texted the host, Claire. "Who else is here?" I stared at the message, willing it to be read, but the reply never came. "Why is it so quiet?" Leah whispered. "I don't hear anything anymore." That's when we realized the humming had stopped. The footsteps outside, the scratching, they were all gone, leaving only an eerie stillness in their wake. We sat in the dark for what felt like hours, but neither of us dared to move. The night dragged on, heavy and suffocating. Eventually, we fell into an uneasy sleep, the weight of the silence pressing down on us. Morning didn't bring the comfort I had hoped for. We ventured outside cautiously, the light of day failing to shake the fear that had gripped us the night before. As I approached the front door, I saw the first sign of something wrong. Muddy handprints smeared across the windows as if someone or something had been touching them from the outside. The scratches on the front door were deeper now, gouges that hadn't been there when we had locked ourselves in. When I looked out toward the tree line, the SUV was gone. But the grass was stained black with engine oil, a mark that lingered long after the car had disappeared. I checked my phone. Claire had finally replied, "Sorry, was offline. Hope you enjoyed your stay." The message felt hollow, too casual, like she wasn't aware of anything that had happened. We packed our things and left as quickly as we could. The car ride back was quiet. Leah didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension between us. Something had followed us back from that cabin, and I knew it. Later, I checked the reviews of the cabin online, and it was clear we weren't the only ones who had experienced something strange. 3 other couples had stayed in the last month alone, each reporting eerily similar events: tapping at the door, figures in the night, a feeling of being watched. Then, I came across something even worse, a news article about a missing woman named Clara who had vanished near Bukidnon the year before. Her last known location? Standing in front of the same cabin we had stayed in. We never really left the cabin behind. It followed us. Like a shadow, we couldn't escape. Leah started sleepwalking, whispering "Tulog na" to an empty corner of our apartment. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, and every night I checked under the bed just in case. One night, I lay in bed. I heard it, the sound of an idling engine outside. I went to the window and saw a black Toyota Fortuner parked across the street. The same one from the cabin. It sat there for hours, the engine running, waiting. I don't know who was in the car, but I know one thing. We can't escape. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be alone standing in front of an old wooden cabin in Sagada, far away from everything I once knew. I wasn't supposed to be here on my honeymoon either, because Liza had called it off. 3 days before the wedding, "I can't marry someone who's always chasing ghosts, Javi," she said. Those words echoed in my mind as I pulled my suitcase up the creaky porch steps. There I was, 27 years old, dumped, broke, and without a future. The wedding venue in Palawan, with its beaches and sunsets, was now a painful reminder of what could have been. I lost my deposit, and with it, any semblance of dignity. To make matters worse, my camera, the only thing that kept me afloat as a freelance photographer, had been stolen in Manila. I was now unemployed, unloved, and with nothing to my name. So when I found the Airbnb listing for a secluded mountain getaway at $500 a night, I didn't think twice. How could I? I had no other choice. The pictures online made it look like a charming retreat, even if the description seemed a little too vague. Still, I was desperate. I booked the place, relieved that I could get away from the memories of Liza and the ghost of what could have been. The first sign that something was wrong came when I arrived at the cabin and found the lockbox rusted shut. It took me a good 5 minutes to pry it open, only to find that the front door creaked open at the lightest touch, as if it had been waiting for me. My stomach twisted. I should have turned around right then, but I didn't. Inside, the smell hit me immediately. Musty, like mildew with something sharp underneath it, almost metallic. Like copper or burnt hair, the place was a far cry from the cozy mountain retreat in the photos. The walls were covered in peeling floral wallpaper, stained with something dark that I didn't want to examine too closely. I shrugged it off and tried to ignore the unsettling feeling crawling up my spine. On the fireplace mantel, there was a small pink shoe, a child's left shoe, size 5. I didn't think much of it at first. Probably just a prank, I told myself, but when I saw the guest book on the table, I froze. The last entry read, "Get out while you can. Monsieur Reyes, 2019. My heart skipped a beat. I almost shut the book, but something made me glance at the page one last time. I could have sworn I heard a faint creak from the attic. I ignored it. I had to. I couldn't afford to think too much about it. The sun began to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the room. I set my suitcase down in the corner of the master bedroom and let out a long breath, hoping this place would help me forget my pain. Maybe in the quiet of the mountains I could start to heal. But as I unpacked, I noticed something strange. A cold spot in the middle of the room. No explanation. It was still sweltering outside, yet here in the cabin it felt like a breeze straight from the icebox. I tried to shake it off, but the cold crept up my spine, making my skin crawl. Later, I went to use the bathroom. As I turned the tap, I was greeted with the smell of rotten eggs. Sulfuric, foul. I turned it off, hoping it was just the plumbing, but the stench lingered in the air. I didn't know if it was the isolation or just my own state of mind, but everything started to feel off. I heard a voice, a whisper, faint and unsettling, coming from somewhere above me. "You're not who we expected." I froze, my heart pounding. It wasn't just the echo of my thoughts or the wind howling outside. It was a voice. It was a woman's voice, soft and slow. I ran up the stairs, but before I could get to the attic door, there was a loud thud from above. Something heavy, like a barrel, rolling across the floor. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, but the reception was spotty at best. I stood there for a few seconds, my breath coming in quick gasps. But when nothing happened, I tried to calm myself down. I must have imagined it. After all, this was just a mountain retreat, a secluded cabin far from civilization. There was no reason to panic. But the house wasn't done with me yet. It was just after 6 when the house turned on me. The thing I had ignored, the feeling of being watched, grew stronger. The air was thick with tension. I could hear footsteps above me, too heavy to be my own. The house was alive. I ran to the front door, planning to leave before whatever was in this place caught up with me. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The lock refused to turn, as if it had been rusted shut from the inside. Panic set in as I moved to the windows. They were boarded up too, every single one. From the kitchen I could hear it, metal scraping on metal, a sharp, slow sound like a knife being sharpened. I turned, my legs trembling, but I knew there was no way out. Then a giggle. It was faint at first, a child's giggle, but it grew louder, until it felt as if it was coming from all around me. I looked over my shoulder, but the room was empty. My heart raced as I realized I had no way to escape. I ran toward the basement window, hoping it was my only chance. My arms bled as I squeezed through the broken glass, but I didn't care. The giggling followed me, growing louder, and I could feel it. It was closing in. With one final push, I crawled through the window, onto the dirt and rocks below. My body was scraped raw, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't stop running. I didn't look back. By the time I made it to the road, I was out of breath, covered in cuts and bruises. I collapsed on the shoulder, gasping for air, and that's when I saw the police cars. 3 of them surrounding the property. Officers were in hazmat suits, pulling out black body bags. I didn't understand at first. A detective approached me. His face was grim, and in his hand was a photo. A family photo from a missing persons report. The family had disappeared in 2018. They were last seen at the same Airbnb I had just fled from. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked. I shook my head. My booking confirmation had already vanished from my email, and the listing for the cabin had been taken down. I was just another victim, just another guest who barely made it out alive. I looked at the camera in my hand, hoping it would at least give me some evidence of what happened. But when I checked the last photo I took, my stomach churned. There she was, a woman in a tattered wedding dress standing behind me in the kitchen. Her hands were on my shoulders, her smile far too wide. I could almost hear her voice in my mind. "You're not who we expected. It's been weeks since I left that place. I've tried to go back to some semblance of normal life, but I can't escape it." At 3:17 a.m., I hear the pipes in my new apartment rattle, just like the sound from the house. And the Instagram photos. They keep appearing on my feed. Images of the house, tagged from an account I don't recognize. I try to block them, but they come back over and over. Liza texted me last week. She asked, "Who's the woman in your wedding photos?" The worst part is when I searched for M. Reyes, I found an article. Missing bride last seen at Zagata Airbnb. Her name was Maricel, her dress was white, and her listing still active. I never imagined we'd end up here. We had just about given up. Manila Mysteries, our YouTube channel, was a dying dream. It started off as a passion project for me, Rico, and Andrew. 3 broke 20-somethings obsessed with the strange and unexplained in Manila. Our idea was simple: explore haunted places, urban legends, abandoned hospitals, old factories, whatever we could get our hands on. But our luck had been running out for months. The last video we did, about an abandoned hospital in Makati, got demonetized. No explanation. Just a YouTube email stating graphic content. Of course, that was after the whole thing went viral. We thought it was our ticket to finally breaking through. But the video went down, and so did our channel's growth. To make matters worse, my girlfriend left me. "I can't do this anymore, Rico," she said. "I need someone with a real job, someone with a future." That was the final blow. It's hard to get your life together when everything is falling apart, and all you have left is a failing channel and debt piling up from 3 months of unpaid bills. Then, we found it. The listing that could be our comeback. It was a dilapidated industrial space listed on Airbnb. The pictures made it look perfect. Exposed pipes, high ceilings, polished concrete floors. Edgy urban loft with authentic factory charm, it said. The place was only $800 a night. I should have known better. But we were desperate. We booked it. Maybe, just maybe, if we could get a solid episode out of it, things would turn around. Maybe we'd go viral. Maybe this would be the break we needed. What could go wrong? It was just an abandoned factory. Or so we thought. We arrived at the factory after sunset. The building loomed over us, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. It wasn't what we expected. Sure, the pictures made. It seemed chic, but standing in front of it, the air was thick with the stench of machine oil. And something else. Something that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just old. It was suffocating. We found the keypad lock and entered the code, but the beeping wouldn't stop. It was relentless. A constant screech in the air. "Maybe the batteries are dead," Andrew suggested. We tried again, but it didn't work. Jason pressed harder on the numbers, and finally the door clicked open with a loud creak. Inside, it was colder than I expected, and I noticed something that made me pause. The bathroom mirror was shattered from the inside. How could it have broken like that? There were no signs of a struggle, no obvious explanation. A faint light flickered overhead, casting a dull glow across the space. Then we walked deeper into the main hall, the sound of our footsteps muffled by the layer of dust on the floor. In the center of the room, perfectly placed on the conveyor belt, was a small red children's shoe. Size 3. I stared at it, trying to understand. Who would leave that there? Jason laughed. Probably just the last guest's kid. Kids leave things behind all the time, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. Just then, the power went out. We stood in complete darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. I pulled out my phone to use its flashlight, and that's when I saw it. The unmistakable reflection of something moving in the distance. The emergency light flickered, and in the brief flashes, I caught a glimpse of something large. Something moving unnaturally, fast, like a shadow darting between the broken machinery. My heart hammered in my chest. I had a bad feeling. A feeling like we shouldn't be here. I don't know why I decided to split up. Maybe I thought the footage would be better if I filmed B-roll of the old control room. Or maybe I was just trying to calm my nerves. But that was the biggest mistake I made. I walked through the abandoned corridors, my footsteps echoing. The building felt alive in a strange way. Every time I turned a corner, there was a creak in the floorboards or a gust of cold air. Then out of nowhere, the conveyor belt jerked to life. The grinding sound of rusted gears filled the room, followed by a sudden, terrifying noise. Something running fast. I froze in place. My blood ran cold. The figure that darted out from behind the machines was not human. Its limbs were too long, its jaw unhinged, hanging like something from a nightmare. Its eyes, God, its eyes, reflected the emergency exit light like a cat's, glowing bright and unblinking. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I only vomited, my stomach twisting as the figure raced toward me, its fingers scraping across the concrete. It left behind streaks of something dark, something that looked like oil but smelled worse. I ran. I don't know how I made it back to Jason and Andrew, but I did. They were already in the van, waiting. The sound of my pounding heart drowned out everything else. I barely remember the drive. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wheel, and the engine of the L300 van rattled louder than I thought possible. I slammed into the metal shutter at the entrance as we sped out, my foot pressing harder on the gas than I should have. We didn't speak for a long time. But when we finally pulled over at a gas station, I pulled up the Airbnb app, expecting to see the usual confirmation page, but there was nothing. The listing had vanished. It was gone, completely gone. I checked the payment details. The amount had been refunded with no record, no explanation. The host's profile, it said, last active, 1987. That's when the realization hit me. It wasn't just some abandoned factory. It wasn't a quirky Airbnb. We had stumbled into something far worse. Our footage from that night went viral. We uploaded it to the channel the next day, hoping for the best. But the video didn't last. YouTube took it down for graphic content, citing a brief clip of the thing that had chased me through the factory. It had been in the frame for less than a second, but it was enough. The horror of it was too much for the platform. Rico, Jason, and I were left in a limbo of disappointment. Our channel was dead again. But the nightmares, they weren't. They kept coming. Rico couldn't sleep without the lights on. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the grinding of the conveyor belt and the scraping sound of claws against concrete. I did a little digging, just out of curiosity, and what I found was even worse than what we experienced. The factory had closed in 1986 after 37 workers vanished overnight. The police had called it mass hysteria. But the families? They never stopped searching. They swore they heard the machine still running long after the building had been shut down. And the owner? His name was still on the Airbnb deed. It was the same name I'd seen on the host profile. I still see the red children's shoe sometimes, in factories, in abandoned warehouses, even in loading docks, just sitting there waiting. I don't know why I can't shake this feeling, but I know one thing for sure. Some places aren't just abandoned. They're hiring. The unspoken truth-some. Airbnb hosts don't just want your money, they want new tenants and factories. They're always hiring. I should have known better, but when you're on the edge of losing everything, you do crazy things. My name's Mateo and I'm 26. My best friend Colton is 25. We're not criminals, but we might as well have been. Both of us were running from something, just not the law. I had just watched the startup I poured my soul into collapse. The investors pulled out, the tech went under, and everything I had worked for crumbled overnight. My savings were gone, and with them the last shred of hope I had for a real future. Colton wasn't much better off. His fiancée, Jess, left him for his best friend. That's a punch to the gut I don't wish on anyone. It hit him harder than he let on. He had everything planned, and then in an instant it was all wiped out. We were both drowning in debt. Credit card companies calling at all hours, bill collectors tracking us down. So when we saw the listing on Airbnb, unique spiritual retreat in Batangas, something about it spoke to us. The pictures made it seem like a slice of peace. Old Spanish architecture, candle-lit arches, a quiet escape from the chaos of our lives. It was only $200 a night, a steal for a place like this. Maybe this would be the reset we needed. Maybe we'd find a little peace. Find ourselves, like the listing promised. But there was one thing I should have noticed. The fine print. Guests, report feeling a holy presence. At the time, we laughed it off. Who wouldn't want to retreat to clear their minds? Who wouldn't want to escape for just a few days and forget about the world? But the moment we arrived, things didn't feel right. It was late afternoon when we arrived, the sun hanging low in the sky. The chapel stood in eerie silence on the hilltop, like a relic of another time. A faded statue of Saint Michael greeted us at the entrance, but something was wrong. His head was missing and the body seemed to lean awkwardly to one side. A chill ran through me as I walked past it, brushing the dust from the stone steps. The host's instructions were simple. Key under the statue of Saint Michael. But when we tried to find the key, I felt my stomach drop. The statue's head was gone, and the hole where it once rested was filled with cobwebs. I glanced at Colton. Just a weird coincidence, he said, clearly trying to brush off the unease we were both feeling. We entered the chapel, the door creaking on its hinges. Inside, it was darker than I expected, the only light coming from a few candles scattered around the altar. The air smelled musty like rotting wood and incense, as though this place hadn't seen a visitor in years. The pews were ancient, their wood cracked and splintered, and the stained glass windows were shattered. Bullet holes peppering the ceiling, remnants of some forgotten conflict. In the guest book, the last entry sent a jolt through me. They come at 3 a.m. run. The date was from 1997. I laughed nervously. Probably just some old guest's idea of a prank, Colton said, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and then I noticed the ring. A single wedding band, sitting untouched on the altar, engraved with a name I recognized. Jess Reyes. Colton didn't see it at first. When he did, he just stared at it for a long time. Weird coincidence, he muttered again, but the air felt thick now. It wasn't just a weird coincidence. Then, without warning, the door slammed shut behind us. The sound echoed through the chapel, as if someone had shoved it with all their strength. We didn't speak for a while after the door slammed. There was a heavy silence in the air, and for the first time, I felt like we weren't alone. Colton checked his phone, trying to adjust the flashlight to illuminate the room. The glow from his screen barely reached the far corners of the chapel, but I could see the pews creak as if someone had just stood up, but we were alone. I shook my head, trying to focus. Let's just get the footage and leave. We'll be out of here in an hour. But as I walked toward the altar, I felt a cold breath brush against my neck. It smelled faintly of incense, but it had a decayed undertone, like something was rotting in the walls. I turned around sharply. Did you feel that? I asked Colton, but he didn't answer. Instead, his phone flashlight flicked across the doorway, and I caught a glimpse of something. A figure. A man in a priest's cassock standing in the doorway, but his feet didn't touch the ground. His body was hovering just above the floor, and his face was hidden under the dark hood. Before I could say anything, the air around us seemed to press in. The thud of something heavy hitting the floor above us rattled the chapel. I froze. What the hell was that? Colton whispered, his voice shaking. We need to get out now. I couldn't get the words out fast enough. We bolted for the door. It was locked. I tried the handle, rattling it desperately. Nothing. The windows barred. There was no way out. From the altar, the figure in the cassock reappeared. Its face was rotted to bone, the skin falling off in jagged pieces as it tilted its head toward us. Its eyes were dark, empty pits, and I could feel its gaze burning into me. Colton, do something, I yelled. Colton grabbed a nearby pew and with all his strength rammed it into the stained glass windows. The glass shattered with a loud crash, sending shards flying across the floor. We tumbled through the broken window and into the graveyard. Outside, our hands sliced by the glass. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of the main road. We didn't look back. The following day, we checked our phones. We had received a message from the host. Sorry for the inconvenience. We'll refund your stay. BTW, did you see Factor Santiago? He's our caretaker. I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping. We hadn't seen anyone named Factor Santiago. No one had helped us. There was no caretaker. Colton was already unraveling. Every night he slept with a rosary wrapped around his fist. If anyone touched his left ring finger, he screamed, his eyes wide with terror. It was as if the very presence of that ring, the one we had found on the altar, had been branded into his soul. I didn't fare much better. I spent days combing through news reports, trying to make sense of what had happened. That's when I found it. A news clipping from 1987. A priest named Factor Santiago had hanged himself in that chapel after murdering a newlywed couple. The groom's name? Colton Reyes, and the bride's ring? Identical to the one on the altar. The strange occurrences didn't stop there. Colton's ex-fiancée texted him a photo of the chapel's doorway, but it was from an angle neither of us had ever seen. It was as if she had been there, Every time we tried to book a new place on Airbnb, the app would redirect us to that same chapel. The listing? Still active. And the most chilling part? There was one new review. Felt so welcomed, will definitely return. C. Reyes. The date? Yesterday. The unspoken truth. Some Airbnbs don't just host guests, they collect souls, and checkout is never an option.